The galaxy had learned, over 10,000 standard cycles, what to fear. It feared expanding swarms that stripped stars bare. It feared machine intellects that calculated extinction with flawless indifference. It feared empires that consumed cultures the way black holes consumed light. It did not fear humanity. Humanity was a footnote, a brief annotation in the great concordance of sapient species, filed under extinct or irrelevant civilizations. A species that had burned brightly, briefly, and then, according to every official survey, vanished beyond the mapped spiral arms during the era of first expansion. No one mourned them, no one searched for them. And so no one noticed when a long-dead human colony answered a signal that was never meant for it. The signal originated in the outer Perseid Reach, a region so politically insignificant it barely justified a patrol. Sparse stars, no trade routes, no strategic resources. The Reach existed primarily as a buffer, an empty gulf separating the civilized core from whatever unknown horrors might someday crawl in from the dark. The Khepri hegemony controlled it nominally, though control was generous. The hegemony was an old power, proud and ritual-bound, their insectal aristocracy ruling from crystalline hive worlds closer to the galactic center. To them, the Reach was a hunting ground for junior admirals and a dumping ground for obsolete fleets. When the hegemony's exploratory cruiser chorus of final light detected an anomalous energy spike near Perseid 9, the crew assumed it was a decaying stellar remnant or a misaligned sensor ghost. They were wrong. The spike was artificial, precise, structured, and ancient. Captain Threxel of the third molting lineage studied the data with irritation more than concern. The readings showed a burst of tightly compressed spatial distortion, an old-style jump signature, inefficient and crude by modern standards. A relic. Likely debris from a preconcordant species, Threxel clicked, mandibles flexing in mild disdain. Log it and prepare to move on. The science cast hesitated. Captain, the signal repeated. Threxel paused. Repeated signals were not debris. Origin. The answer took longer than it should have. That's the anomaly, the scientist said slowly. It originates from inside Perseid 9 gravity well. Silence spread across the bridge. Perseid 9 was listed as barren, a failed terraform candidate abandoned before the hegemony's grandfathers had hatched. No atmosphere worth noting, no magnetosphere, no life. No civilizations. Threxel's compound eyes narrowed. Run a deep scan. The scan returned something impossible. Structures. Buried beneath kilometers of ice and regolith. Vast, angular formations arranged with geometric precision that no natural process could explain. Power readings, minimal but active, not decaying, not dying. Maintained. Who authorized settlement there? Threxel demanded. No record exists, the archivist cast replied. The planet is listed as never colonized. The captain felt something unfamiliar tighten in his thorax. A whisper of unease. News of the find traveled quickly, first to the hegemony's regional overseers, then outward, rippling across the galactic core like a dropped shard of crystal on a glass floor. An unregistered civilization was not unprecedented, but an unrecorded one was. Within cycles, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Representatives from dozens of empires filled the concentric rings of the Chamber of Accord. Towering avians wrapped in living banners, luminous cephalopods suspended in nutrient spheres, metallic synth lords whose voices echoed from 1,000 distributed nodes. At the center hovered the holographic projection of Perseid 9. and beneath its frozen crust, the impossible shapes. This is an error, declared High Archivist Vayan of the Telari Combine. Our records from the first survey are absolute. No sapient species existed in that sector at the time. The Kepri delegate inclined her thorax stiffly. Nevertheless, the structures are real and operational. Operational, another voice snapped, after 10,000 cycles. Yes, murmurs spread. The Galactic core prided itself on total knowledge. The idea that an entire civilization could exist beyond its notice was unsettling. Identify the species, demanded the council speaker, an ancient being whose form shifted like slow smoke. Every architecture bears a signature. The answer came hesitantly. Our analysts have found a partial match, the Kepri delegate said. Primitive, carbon-based, bilateral symmetry, the construction style is human. The chamber fell silent. Then laughter erupted. Human. The extinct species. The ones who had barely scratched at faster-than-light travel before vanishing into obscurity. Their ruins, few and unimpressive, were museum curiosities, cited as examples of how fragile ambition could be. Impossible, scoff. Edda Ralvian warlord, his armored bulk bristling. Humans lacked the technology for long-term extrasolar survival at that scale. And yet, the speaker intoned, the structures persist. A decision was reached quickly, as it always was when the core felt its authority questioned. A delegation would be sent, not diplomats. This was not a matter worthy of respect, but an enforcement fleet. The Perseid reach would be secured. The colony, if it existed, would be catalogued, dismantled if necessary, and absorbed. Order would be restored. The fleet arrived 3 cycles later. 32 vessels of mixed origin, led by the hegemony's warbarge Regal Mandate, its hull adorned with the sigils of conquest older than most stars in the region. Escorts fanned out, weapons charged, not because resistance was expected, but because protocol demanded dominance be displayed. As they approached Perseid 9, long-range sensors painted a clearer picture. The planet was no longer barren. Atmospheric readings showed a thin but stable envelope, artificially sustained. Orbital debris suggested extensive construction, no, not debris, infrastructure. Silent satellites arranged in layered shells, dormant but intact. No transmissions answered the fleet's hails. Deploy ground probes, ordered the hegemony admiral. Before the probes could launch, space rippled. It was subtle at first, a distortion so fine that older sensor suites barely registered it. Then, the ripple deepened, folding light inward like fabric pulled by invisible hands. Something was arriving. No known jump signature matches that profile, the sensor cast reported, panic edging their clicks. The distortion expanded, and space tore open. From the wound emerged a vessel. It was immense. Not sleek like core warships, nor ornate like hegemony barges. It was brutal in its simplicity, angular, armored, scarred by what looked like centuries of combat. Its hull bore no sigils, no glowing displays, no visible weapon ports. Just mass. The ship did not broadcast identification. It did not maneuver aggressively. It simply arrived, and in doing so, displaced so much energy that several escort vessels were shoved aside by gravitational wake alone. The Council fleet froze. Another distortion followed. Then another. And another. Human warships emerged from the dark like revenants, forming a silent wall between Perseid 9 and the assembled armada. They took position with terrifying precision, their formation neither defensive nor overtly hostile. Measured. Restrained. Open a channel, the admiral ordered, mandibles trembling despite himself. A signal returned immediately. Clear, focused, old but refined. A human voice filled the bridge, calm, steady, and utterly unafraid. This is Fleet Warden Elias Rourke of the Perseid Autonomous Defense Network. A pause. You are trespassing in restricted space. The admiral stared at the projection, disbelief flooding his senses. Humans were not supposed to speak like that. You will withdraw, the voice continued, unraised yet absolute. You have one warning. Across the fleet, weapon systems hesitated. Somewhere in the vastness of space, ancient guns quietly aligned. And for the first time in 10,000 cycles, the galactic core felt something it had forgotten how to name. Fear, the silence that followed the human's warning, was heavier than any weapon lock. Across the Council enforcement fleet, captains hesitated, not because they lacked firepower, but because every instinct honed by centuries of war screamed the same warning. This was wrong. Fleet Warden Elias Rourke did not repeat himself. He did not posture. His transmission carried no emotional spike, no rhetorical flourish meant to intimidate. It was a statement of fact, delivered with the calm certainty of someone accustomed to being obeyed or to annihilating those who were not. Admiral K.R. Athel of the Kepri hegemony broke the silence first. This sector is under provisional jurisdiction of the Galactic Council, the Admiral replied, voice layered with ceremonial authority. Identify your governing body and submit to inspection. Non-compliance will be interpreted as hostility. The human response came without delay. There is no governing body you recognize, Rourke said, and your interpretation is irrelevant. A subtle shift rippled through the human formation. Not an advance, not a retreat, a recalibration. Council tacticians noticed it immediately and felt their unease deepen. The human ships were not reacting to the hegemony fleet. They were adjusting relative to each other, aligning fields, syncing vectors, weaving an invisible lattice of force that sensors struggled to quantify. Captain, whispered one of the Kepri tactical cast, their ships are sharing power across hulls, distributed energy networks, at that scale. Enough, K.R. Athel snapped. They are relics, ancient survivors clinging to obsolete systems. But even, as he spoke, his words rang hollow. Because relics did not move like this. Within the galactic core, the council chamber watched events unfold in real time. Holographic projections showed the Perseid standoff from a dozen angles, data streams cascading like rain. What we are seeing violates known human capability, said High Archivist Vayan, his confidence eroding. Even at their theoretical peak, humans could not have built vessels of this displacement. Unless, intoned the synth lord KX9, our assumptions are incorrect. The implication chilled the chamber. The council speaker's shifting form slowed, focusing. Explain. Human extinction was inferred, not confirmed, KX9 continued, based on absence of expansion signatures and lack of communication. It is statistically plausible that a subset of their species pursued a divergent technological path, one optimized for isolation rather than conquest. Isolation breeds stagnation, snarled the Ralvian warlord. Or refinement, KX9 countered. At Perseid 9, Admiral K.R. Athel made his choice. Advance, he ordered, minimal weapons charge, show them the weight of the core. The hegemony warbarge surged forward, its escorts following in disciplined formation. Energy signatures spiked, not to firing levels, but close enough to convey threat. The human fleet did not move. Final warning, Rourke said quietly. K'Arathul ignored him. The distance between fleets closed. Then, without any visible weapon discharge, space bent. The lead Khepri escort lurched violently, its hull twisting as if gripped by a colossal, unseen hand. Structural alarms screamed. Before its captain could react, the ship was hurled sideways, cleanly, precisely, into the path of another vessel. Both ships vanished in a bloom of silent annihilation. No explosion. No debris. Just absence. The Council fleet reeled. What weapon was that? Someone shouted. Sensors went blind for a fraction of a second, overwhelmed by cascading gravitational distortions. When they recovered, the human ships were unchanged. No heat bloom, no recoil, no indication of effort. They manipulated localized gravity wells, the tactical cast reported, horror seeping into their voice. Weaponized spacetime at close range. That's impossible, K'Arathul hissed. It was theoretical, even for the precursors, another officer whispered. Rourke spoke again. We told you to withdraw. Panic rippled outward, but discipline, hard-won and ironclad, held the Council fleet together. Weapons began to charge in earnest, targeting arrays painted human hulls with lethal intent. And still, the humans did not fire. Instead, something else happened. A signal pulsed outward from the human formation, not an attack, but a broadcast. It bypassed standard encryption layers with effortless contempt, injecting itself directly into Council data feeds. The image that resolved was not a tactical schematic. It was a map. A star map. It showed the known galaxy and then expanded. Sector after sector unfolded beyond the core's borders, regions long dismissed as empty or unreachable lighting up with dense clusters of systems. Infrastructure, transit lanes, defense grids. Human space. This is a fabrication, the Ralvian warlord barked. No, KX-9 said softly, it is too detailed, too consistent. Rourke's voice accompanied the map. 10,000 cycles ago, he said, your ancestors expanded outward in search of dominion. Humanity expanded inward. The map zoomed further, revealing layered constructs surrounding stars, vast shells, energy collectors, habitats woven into stellar output with terrifying efficiency. We learned early that visibility invites conquest, Rourke continued, so we erased ourselves from your sky. The implication struck like a kinetic blow. You hid, K'Arathul spat, out of fear. No, Rourke replied, out of patience. The map shifted again. This time historical overlays appeared, familiar to every Council historian. Known galactic wars, extinction events, the rise and fall of empires. Human annotations appeared alongside them. Observed. Modeled. Accounted for. You were never alone, Rourke said. You were simply unobserved. A low murmur spread across the Council chamber as analysts cross-referenced the data. Patterns emerged, disturbingly precise correlations between unexplained anomalies and human-projected models. They predicted our conflicts, Vayan whispered. They anticipated them, corrected KX-9, and avoided them. At Perseid 9, Admiral K'Arathul felt something crack within him. You claim sovereignty over this sector, he said, struggling to maintain authority. By what right? Rourke's answer was immediate. By survival. Another pause. By restraint. The human fleet finally moved. Not forward. Upward. The ships ascended relative to the galactic plane, their formation unfolding like a three-dimensional equation. As they rose, previously in Vissi, Bleak constructs flickered into existence, massive orbital frames surrounding Perseid 9, weapons platforms older than the hegemony itself, their surfaces scarred by time but humming with dormant power. These platforms, Rourke said, have been here since before your first interstellar treaty. Energy levels surged. Not toward the Council fleet. Toward deep space. Why are you showing us this? The Admiral demanded. Because, Rourke replied, you came with force, and force deserves context. Space answered. From beyond sensor range, something vast shifted, a presence so enormous it bent readings by its mere existence, not a ship. A network. Human fleets, thousands of them, flared into being across the Perseid reach, emerging from folded space with silent inevitability. They did not crowd, they did not rush. They surrounded. The Council fleet was no longer facing a border patrol. It was standing inside a kill zone centuries in the making. Rourke's final words cut through the rising panic like a blade. We are not re-emerging, he said. You have simply flown far enough to notice us. In the Council chamber, alarms sounded for the first time in recorded history. The Galactic core, arrogant, ancient, unchallenged, was staring into the abyss of its own ignorance. And the abyss was human. For the first time since the formation of the Galactic Council, its fleets did not advance, threaten, or posture. They waited. Within the kill zone surrounding Perseid 9, Council ships floated in rigid formation, weapons charged but useless, every vector mapped and countermapped by an intelligence so vast it felt less like an enemy and more like a law of physics. Humanity had not surrounded them with rage. It had surrounded them with certainty. Fleet Warden Elias Rourke stood on the bridge of the HSS Resolute, hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed on the holographic sphere of space around Perseid 9. Hundreds of human vessels glimmered as calm blue icons, each one a node in a distributed mind spanning light years. Behind him, officers worked in near silence. There was no shouting, no frantic energy. Every movement was measured, practiced. This was not escalation. This was execution prevention. Council fleet status, Rourke asked. Stable, replied Commander Aisha Cole, her voice steady. No aggressive maneuvering. Weapon charge levels holding. They're waiting for instructions. Rourke nodded. They always waited, once they realized. Across the void, Admiral K.R. Athel felt the weight of 1,000 unseen guns pressing against his exoskeleton. His fleet, once a symbol of unquestioned authority, now felt fragile, obsolete, exposed. He opened a private channel to the Galactic Council. This is not a border incident, he said, mandibles trembling despite his effort to control them. We are inside a premeditated human defense lattice. They anticipated intrusion at this scale. The response from the Council speaker was slow, deliberate. Can you withdraw? K.R. Athel looked at the tactical display. Human ships occupied every viable jump vector. Even if they powered drives to maximum, the momentary distortions would expose them to precision gravitational strikes. The humans did not need to fire. They simply needed to allow physics to finish the job. No, K.R. Athel admitted, not without their consent. Silence followed. Then the speaker spoke words that had never been uttered before. Request dialogue. The request arrived on Rourke's console, flagged not as a demand, but as a petition. He studied it for a long moment. Open channel, he said. The holographic projection shifted, resolving into the shimmering form of the Council speaker. Its presence filled the bridge, ancient and heavy, with authority long unchallenged. Human fleet warden, the speaker intoned. We acknowledge miscalculation. Rourke inclined his head slightly, not a bow, not defiance. Recognition. You entered restricted space with weapons charged, Rourke replied. That is not a miscalculation, that is a choice. The speaker's form rippled. Your species was believed extinct. We were, Rourke said simply, by your definition. The dialogue was broadcast, not only to the trapped fleet, but to the entire galactic core. Human systems, long silent, allowed their presence to be felt for the first time. Stars brightened as ancient arrays powered up. Long-dormant relays carried signals no one had prepared for. Humanity was no longer hiding. It was speaking. We did not vanish, Rourke continued. We withdrew. You expanded outward, consuming, conquering, standardizing. We looked at the same galaxy and saw a different truth. The star map reappeared, this time overlaid with casualty projections, entire species erased in council-sanctioned wars, cultures absorbed until nothing distinct remained. Your peace, Rourke said, is built on erasure. The Ralvian warlord snarled from his seat in the council chamber. You lek. Cure us while pointing weapons at our fleets. Rourke's gaze hardened. We are not pointing weapons, he said. We are standing in the way. At his unspoken command, the human fleet shifted again. This time, weapons did come online, but not aimed at the council ships. They turned outward. Deep space trembled. From beyond the Perseid reach, sensor ghosts resolved into clarity. A massive armada, unmarked, predatory, moving fast, emerged from intergalactic dark, not members of the Council, not known to any archive. An extragalactic incursion force. They've been watching you, Rourke said quietly, waiting for the moment your core fleets were drawn away. Panic exploded in the council chamber. This threat was not detected, Vayon cried. Because you were not looking in the right direction, Rourke replied. The incoming fleet was vast. Organic hulls twisted around weaponized singularities, movement patterns alien even to the most jaded tacticians. Their trajectory intersected directly with the core's outer defenses. They will reach your border systems in 17 cycles, Rourke continued. You will not stop them. Why show us this? The speaker demanded. Because, Rourke said, we already did. Human tactical overlays filled the feed. Simulations played out at impossible speed, showing human fleets intercepting the extragalactic force, not at the core, but in deep interstellar space, far from civilian systems, precision strikes, gravitational snares, entire enemy formations folded into themselves and erased. The projected outcome was unequivocal. Human victory. Minimal losses. How long have you known? KX-9 asked, its synthetic voice almost reverent. Since before your last major border war, Rourke answered. We calculated that you would never see them until it was too late. And you said nothing, the speaker asked. We intervened, Rourke said, quietly redirected probes, collapsed transit corridors, fed them false signals. The realization was devastating. Humanity had been fighting wars the galaxy never knew existed. And winning. The extragalactic fleet advanced, then stopped. Without warning, space around it collapsed into a web of controlled singularities. Human ships emerged from folded dimensions, weapons firing in perfect synchronization. There was no spectacle, no chaos. The enemy simply ceased. Across the Council's displays, the incursion force unraveled, its ships crushed, dissected, and erased by physics turned into a scalpel. It was over in minutes. The Council chamber was silent. "You see now," Rourke said softly, "why we value restraint. The human fleet around Perseid 9 powered down its weapons. Not because the threat was gone, but because it had never truly been there. You came to subjugate a forgotten colony," Rourke said. "Instead, you found the wall that has been holding the dark at bay." The speaker's form dimmed, its authority shaken. "What do you want?" it asked. Rourke exhaled, a small human sound carrying the weight of millennia. "We want you to leave," he said, "and to remember that the galaxy is bigger than your core." A pause. "And if we refuse?" the Ralvian warlord growled. Rourke's eyes hardened, not with anger, but with finality. "Then," he said, "we stop standing in the way." The implication was clear. Humanity was not threatening conquest. It was offering protection. And the galaxy had to decide whether to accept it or face what waited beyond alone. As the Council fleet prepared, shakily, to withdraw, one final alert rippled through human command channels. Deep within the Perseid reach, an ancient protocol activated. A beacon long dormant began to broadcast. Not a warning, a summons. Humanity's full presence, no longer hidden, no longer silent, was waking up. And the galaxy was about to learn what it meant when the forgotten giants finally stood. The withdrawal of the Council fleet should have been the end. Historically, it would have been a show of overwhelming force, a recalibration of power, a quiet rewriting of borders followed by generations of uneasy peace. But this moment was different, because humanity did not pursue. It did not demand tribute. It did not expand. Instead, it opened its hands, and in doing so, forced the galaxy to confront a truth far more destabilizing than conquest. The ancient beacon awakened across human space, its signal propagating through layers of folded dimensions and dark matter relays invisible to all non-human instruments. To the rest of the galaxy, it manifested only as a subtle increase in background radiation, an echo without context. Within human civilization, however, it was unmistakable. Sentinel Protocol, era transition. Across thousands of systems, human fleets shifted from dormant watchfulness to active readiness. Not mobilization for war, mobilization for presence. Diplomatic vessels long mothballed were recommissioned. Observation stations adjusted trajectories. To become visible for the first time in 10 millennia. Humanity was stepping into the light. Not as conquerors, as witnesses. The Galactic Council reconvened in emergency session, this time with fear no longer concealed beneath ceremony. Representatives arrived shaken, their confidence eroded by the knowledge that their reign of assumed dominance had existed beneath a human shadow all along. The council speaker addressed the chamber, its voice stripped of ancient arrogance. "We must redefine the balance of the galaxy," it said. "Humanity is no longer a theoretical anomaly. It is a foundational power." A murmur of assent followed, hesitant, reluctant, but real. "What do they demand?" asked High Archivist Vayan. The speaker paused. "They have made no demands. That more than anything terrified them." Fleet Warden Rourke stood once more before the council, this time not as a distant hologram, but as a live projection, his presence carried directly into the chamber without encryption or obfuscation. "We are not joining your council," he said plainly, "nor are we replacing it." The Ralvian warlord bristled. "Then why reveal yourselves now?" Rourke met the alien's gaze without flinching. "Because secrecy is no longer sufficient," he replied. "The galaxy has grown louder, more dangerous. The dark beyond your borders is no longer content to watch. Images filled the chamber, distant, half-understood phenomena at the galaxy's edge. Forces older than the Council, older even than humanity's exile, stirring in the intergalactic void. You were never prepared to face what's coming, Rourke continued, but you don't have to face it alone. The Council speaker's form trembled. You offer alliance. Rourke shook his head slowly. We offered choice. Humanity's proposal was unlike anything the Council had encountered. No annexations, no tribute, no enforced standardization. Instead, a framework, a decentralized defense lattice open to any species willing to contribute without domination. Shared early warning systems, evacuation corridors, mutual non-aggression backed not by threat, but by consequence. Any species that attempts unilateral genocide, forced assimilation, or expansion through extinction, Rourke said evenly, will be stopped. The Ralvian warlord rose in fury. By you. Yes, Rourke replied, by us. Silence. Power had always been measured by what one could take. Humanity measured it by what it would not allow. In the cycles that followed, the galaxy changed. Slowly at first. Council patrols encountered human observation ships, never obstructive, never intrusive, always watching. Border wars that would have once escalated into annihilation instead stalled. Aggressors found their supply lines disrupted by physics itself. Weapons malfunctioned. Jump points collapsed. No signatures were left. No accusations could be proven. But the message was clear. There were lines now. On Perseid 9, the colony that had begun it all, human citizens gathered beneath artificial skies that mimicked a homeworld long lost. They were not warriors by nature. Most had never seen battle, never needed to. Their ancestors had made a choice when the galaxy was young. They had looked at a universe ruled by endless conquest and said no. So they had built in silence. They had watched. They had waited. Not for revenge, for responsibility. Fleet Warden Rourke stood alone on the observation deck of the Resolute, gazing out at the stars. Commander Cole joined him, her expression thoughtful. Do you think they'll accept it? She asked. Some will, Rourke said, some won't. And if they do? Rourke's reflection stared back at him from the reinforced glass, older than he looked, carrying the weight of centuries of vigilance. Then we'll do what we've always done, he said softly. Stand between the galaxy and its worst instincts. Far beyond the core, in the deep dark where light thinned and reality frayed, ancient intelligences recoiled. They had sensed the shift, the awakening. The galaxy was no longer unguarded. Humanity, once forgotten, once underestimated, had reclaimed its place not as rulers, but as custodians of survival itself. Not because they were the strongest, but because, when they finally revealed their strength, they chose restraint. And in that choice, the galaxy found its future.